I'm Ryan Jones, and this is SEO in 2025 Additional Insights.
Ryan, what's your additional insight for SEO in 2025?
So my additional insight for SEO in 2025 is to place a relentless focus on building your brand search volume.
Relentless focus. Okay, that sounds a bit scary. Why is building brand search volume so important?
I don't necessarily think it's such a scary thing, but I think there are kind of some key points we need to focus on. One of them links into a study that Ahrefs put out, I think a week or two ago, which is they looked at 150 million of their keywords via their data, and they found that about approximately 45% of all of these keywords were brand search related or brand related in a kind of way. So.
And has that changed historically? Has that significantly increased, or was that not really part of the study?
It wasn't part of the recent study, but I know Rand Fishkin with Spark Taro has done a few studies in the past, and the trend is gearing sort of upwards at the minute. And I'm sure there's various reasons for that tying into it, but it shows that if we're not placing a sort of focus on brand search volume, then there's a lot of traffic on the table that's being left for us if we're kind of just rolling with the punches and trying to build the sort of, or do what we've done in the past essentially, and kind of build that organic search volume without necessarily focusing on brand.
I'm just wondering if bigger, older online brands will skew those figures. For instance, Amazon, eBay, massive brands like that have been around for 20 plus years nowadays. People are obviously going to, if they use Google, search for generic keyword plus Amazon or plus eBay or wherever they actually want to buy an item from, and that's perhaps nearly 100% brand search volume. You've got up and coming brands or starter brands that need to establish themselves and hopefully get some generic search to begin with before they actually establish themselves as a brand. So do you not think it's perhaps the more established brands that are skewing the fact that brand search volume is more common nowadays?
Yeah, to a point. Yeah, I mean, I know, just based off sort of anecdotal data from myself. If I'm searching on Google and there's a particular thing, then I have sort of preferences to brands that I might go for, clothes, for instance, and things like that, or trainers if I'm looking for shoes or something. But I still don't think that takes away from the sort of importance of smaller brands or more up and coming brands trying to focus on building that search volume. And I think that then links into the SERP changes that we see Google making at the minute, with AI overviews probably being your biggest example at the minute. Just with it kind of seems like with AI overviews, their goal is to answer whatever the question is within the SERP. So I think trying to not necessarily target them exclusively, but try and get our brand mentioned within those AI overviews, those other SERP features that we see, which can then kind of build the sort of brand knowledge, which then will lead into when people start searching for other reasons, whether they're further down the funnel or searching competitors or something like that, then they might also have that brand as front of mind as well to then potentially start searching for your brand plus whatever keywords as well.
Got you. Okay. And what you're, by the sound of it, saying is that brands are more important for Google's and other search engines nowadays because it's a different SERP with AI overviews and non-standard SERP result pages, i.e. not every page being 10 blue links. It means that there are more opportunities for brands, and unless you actually focus in on brand, then you're not having an opportunity to feature on the real estate that exists nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we were just talking before we started recording about how I've been in SEO nearly 10 years. And when I first started, because SERPs were kind of almost exclusively, you might have had a couple of SERP features here and there. But for a lot of keywords, the SERPs still were almost exclusively those sort of 10 blue links that we see. And that's kind of where we sort of focused on, okay, let's now just try and build organic traffic this way. But yeah, I think with the changes Google are trying to make at the minute I can't answer for Google as well, but obviously one of the things it looks like they're doing is they're trying to be as helpful as they can. And why wouldn't they? So any sort of SERP features that they can put out that might necessarily keep users using Google and answering their questions there and then I can see them doing that.
How do you measure success in increased brand search volume? Because if you've got something like AI overviews and other features in the SERPs, are there tools nowadays that actually do a decent job of being able to report back on that data?
In terms of tools, I'm not necessarily sure that there's many tools out there other than your kind of standard keyword tracking tools and that kind of thing to measure search volume. But when you're looking at brand as a whole and sort of even brand search volume as well, it doesn't necessarily have to come from search engines and that kind of thing. So you can measure it like looking at brand search volume is obviously your main one, but then direct traffic as well, which is another success metric that you can use because that'll measure in it coming from different search engines as well as different things like that. SERP ownership as well. So when you search your own brand keywords, what kind of features do you have there? Are you like featured prominently in the knowledge panels, in the Google business profiles, that kind of thing? Is that fully optimized? And then you can look at like social mentions and referrals as well, which can then even further on down the line, that can then lead to branded search. And then a kind of more out there one, which is sort of focused off the SERP, that you can kind of get a sort of measure of how your brand is performing is doing customer surveys as well, which is, I think, one of the most important tasks in SEO itself, because it'll help you know where your brand stands in terms of existing customers and maybe even leads as well and that kind of thing. And obviously, as you know, when your brand is regarded highly, then that'll lead to brand search volume in the future as well.
How do you know which marketing activity increased the brand search volume or the direct traffic that you talk about?
Yeah, it's hard to know. There's kind of things we do. I mean, one of the things we do is using like GTM tags and that kind of thing. So if we're doing a particular campaign, which then leads to referral traffic or something like that, then we can kind of attribute that to that. But I think attribution is messy as a whole. So it's one of those difficult things to really kind of track. But yeah, I think you kind of just got to rely. It's one of those ones that's just messy and you've got to try and do the best job that you can of it.
So can SEOs claim credit for increasing brand search volume? Because you would like to think that they can claim credit for all organic traffic, but I guess that's not the case.
I think they can claim some credit, but I don't think they can necessarily claim all the credit, just because there's a lot of different hands that will have a part in how your brand is sort of regarded with customers, potential customers, that kind of thing. And that'll come from even like people outside of marketing in itself. That'll come from people who work in your sales team, like how well are they following up on leads and being active that way and that kind of thing. And it'll have a sort of impact with like your ownership as well, if they're getting their sort of personal brands out of there, which will link into a way as well. But then I think as SEOs, we all want to know that we're like useful in some way, shape or form, which obviously organic traffic's easy to measure as an SEO. But yeah, I think there's certainly tasks that we do that will also increase brand traffic as well as non-brand traffic. So I think we can take some credit, but not all credit.
It would be good to talk a little bit about which SEO activities can increase brand search volume. So I'm talking about things like what SEO activities can impact AI overviews and perhaps other features on the SERP. And then on the other hand, what are the key non-SEO ways to increase brand search volume? So perhaps SEOs having conversations with and influencing other marketing channels, departments to actually enhance their activities to encourage more brand searches. So maybe starting off with kind of SEO activities that they have direct control over initially. Do you have any thoughts on actually how to go about optimizing your site to make it more likely that you're going to appear in more recent SERP features?
Yeah. So, I mean, SEO tasks as a whole it will kind of come down to what we've always been pretty good at is like content production, that kind of thing, being original with content production. Because obviously, if you just look at like anecdotally, if you were to like search on Google something very top of the funnel, informative piece of content, that kind of thing, you might read this really amazing piece of content and then you might remember the brand from that, and then from there the next it's like that traditional sales funnel technique that we've all been using for quite some time now, that you might resonate with that brand name. Okay, they put out a really nice piece of content, and I might now search for their brand and what they do to try and find that out. Or I might be aware of a competitor, but I'm not necessarily aware of who these guys are yet, and I'll do that kind of thing. So I think content production as well is like one of the biggest ones, but then making sure your website also caters for the entire funnel as well, because brand search will come like from lots of different places. It might come from someone checking out what you offer, whether it's product, services, that kind of thing. It might come from someone who's actively in that sort of research stage just before that buying stage, and they might be looking at competitors versus you, or they might be set on a competitor but having like one last little look. And then it might come from people who are ready to buy as well, and who are just actively looking to get on the site and click on a CTA somewhere and get ready to actively buy as well. So I think those are some of the biggest sort of things that SEOs can contribute to brand search and that kind of thing.
Sorry, just a quick question in relation to what you're saying there. Kind of content production was one of the first areas that you focused on there. How do you know what piece of content to produce for an AI overview? And is that any different to more conventional keyword research that you need to do?
It's kind of the same thing. I mean, at least in my case, and the only examples I can give is the AI overviews that we've won that we can see. And that's kind of come down from, you can do your keyword research using the tools and obviously to get like sort of a little bit of data to back you up, but then actively looking at that SERP as well in a few different locales that you might target. So like VPNs are always a good option to use and that kind of thing, and connect to some different servers and search your keyword there. If we're targeting a certain keyword in the US, for instance, because we have an inkling that search volume might be higher, which it almost always is. But I'll connect to a VPN in like a server in the US and actively search that keyword there, finding that it has an AI overview. And then it kind of comes down to, at least what we've done before, is it kind of then comes down to what we used to do when featured snippets were the new big upcoming thing in SEO, and like seeing what's on the featured snippet. So finding what that generative AI is pulling out, looking at who's featured in those AI overviews as well, what information are they putting out. And not necessarily like copying that, obviously, but like making sure you have the same thing in and then making it better and that kind of thing. That's the process that we've come before, and we've definitely had a few features in our overviews that way as well.
Great. Okay, and then the non-SEO ways that you were going to mention there to increase brand traffic.
Yeah. So non-exclusively SEO ways. One of your biggest ones is still, I think, going to be digital PR, because just that's the type of sort of link building that they do and the sort of brand building that they do. But then also as well, it's not necessarily tied to SEO, but will have an impact on brand, is working with a social media team or a video production team and that kind of thing, and getting content out, whether it's content that's related to the blog post and the content that you're putting out or not. But like making sure you have social media content going out regularly. You can obviously use social media to distribute your blog content as well, that kind of thing. And then obviously doing the same thing with video content as well.
Brilliant. Okay, and we've majored on Google here. Are there other up and coming, perhaps AI search engines or perhaps even discovery platforms that you focus on more nowadays than you used to, as a way to actually demonstrate that brand search that you're managing to achieve?
Yeah, Reddit. Yeah, we focused on that quite a bit since the news broke that Reddit were being featured prominently in search, and Reddit was something we were targeting anyway, but placing a more active focus on being an active presence in communities that around what we do. So like me, for instance, I have an account and I'm actively putting things on and replying to things in like SEO subreddits, testing subreddits, obviously, because we're a testing tool, so it makes sense for us to be there as well, and that kind of thing. And not necessarily doing that thing of like answering a question and then saying, oh, here's a piece of content. But like if someone asks a question and say, oh, I'm trying to do this, and then I want to know if I should use like a single test or an A/B test, then I'll answer that question wholeheartedly. And I just make sure that within my profile that my brand name is mentioned somewhere. So then obviously if they come to look at that and then say, oh, okay, maybe I'll give them a look. So that's one of the things we've been doing on Reddit. But then, yeah, there's obviously lots of other search engines that you shouldn't necessarily ignore just because Google is still so big. You can still focus on Bing, that kind of thing, and the obviously upcoming ones like Search GPT and Perplexity and those kind of AI overview or AI ones. But we've not necessarily placed a sort of massive focus on that yet. We're still sort of in the learning stage when it comes to that.
If an SEO is struggling for time, what should they stop doing right now so they can spend more time doing what you suggest in 2025?
I think they should spend less time doing that more traditional link building that we've seen before and focus on avenues such as digital PR, brand building, which will then lead to links as well, and kind of stop cramming inboxes, trying to get links to content, and focus generally on being helpful with the content that you put out, being helpful to people as a whole, and then that links will come from that.
Ryan Jones is Marketing Manager at SEO Testing, and you can find him over at seotesting.com. Ryan, thanks so much for adding your additional insight to SEO in 2025.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on.
I've been your host, David Bain, and you've been listening to SEO in 2025 Additional Insights, a Majestic series that complements the original podcast, video series, and book. Find out more at seoin2025.com.